Was Micah, who set up a shrine to God, doing right in the eyes of the Lord? This is the question that we'll seek to answer today as we continue our verse-by-verse study of the book of Judges on Walking Through the Bible. Today we're going to be discussing Judges 17, verses 1 to 13, but before we do that, let's read the passage. If you have a Bible with you, you can turn to Judges 17, verse 1, but if you don't have a Bible, don't worry, just follow along with us on the screen. The version that we'll be reading from is the New King James Version. So Judges 17, beginning at verse 1. Now there was a man from the mountains of Ephraim, whose name was Micah. And he said to his mother, "The 1,100 shekels of silver that were taken from you, and on which you put a curse, even saying it in my ears, here is the silver with me. I took it." And his mother said, "May you be blessed by the Lord, my son." So when he had returned the 1,100 shekels of silver to his mother said, "I had wholly dedicated the silver from my hand to the Lord for my son, to make a carved image and a molded image. Now therefore, I will return it to you." Thus he returned the silver to his mother. Then his mother took 200 shekels of silver and gave them to the silversmith, and he made it into a carved image and a molded image, and they were in the house of Micah. The man Micah had a shrine and made an ephod and household idols, and he consecrated one of his sons who became his priest. In those days there was no king in Israel. Everyone did what was right in his own eyes. Now there was a young man from Bethlehem in Judah, of the family of Judah. He was a Levite, and was staying there. The man departed from the city of Bethlehem in Judah to stay wherever he could find a place. Then he came to the mountains of Ephraim, to the house of Micah, as he journeyed. And Micah said to him, "Where do you come from?" So he said to him, "I am a Levite from Bethlehem in Judah, and I am on my way to find a place to stay." Micah said to him, "Dwell with me, and be a father and a priest to me, and I will give you 10 shekels of silver per year, a suit of clothes, and your sustenance." So the Levite went in. Then the Levite was content to dwell with the man, and the young man became like one of his sons to him. So Micah consecrated the Levite, and the young man became his priest, and lived in the house of Micah. Then Micah said, "Now I know that the Lord will be good to me, since I have a Levite as priest." With the conclusion of our study of Samson, we have actually come to the end of our study of the judges of Israel contained in the book of Judges. There will be 2 more judges of Israel before King Saul, those being Eli and Samuel, but their stories are found in the book of 1 Samuel. So we'll cover those 2 men's judgeship when we get to that book. Chapters 17 through 21, though, take place during the period of Judges. But it does not mention any specific judge in particular, so we don't know during which judgeship these events fall into. With this being the case, you might ask then, why are these chapters found in the book of Judges? Well, the simple answer is because, again, they take place during this time period, and at least one of them very early on in this time period. And so it does make sense chronologically that these stories are found here and not at the end of Joshua or the beginning of 1 Samuel. Chapters 17 and 18 are going to introduce to us some of the idolatry in Israel, as well as the establishment of the city of Dan in northern Israel. While chapters 19 through 21 are going to deal with the war that the congregation of Israel had with the tribe of Benjamin over the crime that occurred in Gibeah. Both of these stories help us have a deeper understanding of the nation of Israel as a whole during the time of the Judges, before we transition to the time of the Kings. Though chapter 17 does not give us a definite time period, we can deduce 2 things from it. One, it is before the times of the kings, because verse 6 specifically says so. It also occurs before some in the tribe of Dan migrate into northern Israel, for that will be covered in connection with the story in chapter 18. If you recall back to Joshua 19 verse 47, it is mentioned that some of the Danites migrated here. So now we get the story of this migration. This probably places the events to be earlier on in the period of the Judges, perhaps close to the time of Othniel. Before getting to that migration, those events have to be set up by introducing us to the man named Micah. Micah lived in the mountains of Ephraim, meaning that he was likely of the tribe of Ephraim. Micah was not a righteous man, for when we meet him, he confesses to his mother that he had stolen her money. His mother forgave him of that theft, telling him that in the end nothing was lost, for she was going to use that money to make him a carved image and a molded image to worship God with. This shows you the spiritual condition of Israel during this time. It was a nation in decline. We see in this chapter that Lord is capitalized, meaning that Micah's mother is referring to Jehovah, the God of Israel, and not to Baal or some other Canaanite god. So the images that she wanted to set up were images designed for the worship of Jehovah. But in doing so, it went directly against the commandments given to Israel by Moses. For Exodus 20 verses 4 to 6 says, "You shall not make for yourself a carved image, any likeness of anything that is in heaven above, or that is in the earth beneath, or that is in the water under the earth. You shall not bow down to them, nor serve them. For I, the Lord your God, am a jealous God, visiting the iniquity of the fathers upon the children, to the third and fourth generations, to those who hate me, but showing mercy to thousands, to those who love me, and keep my commandments." A lot of people recognize that idol worship of false gods is wrong, but neglect to realize that idol worship of the true God of heaven is equally wrong. At the time of Micah, it appears that Israel hadn't gone off yet into a complete abandonment of God, but that process had started, and it started with idol worship being practiced in Israel. With the money now returned, Micah's mother had images made, and a shrine was set up in Micah's house, which not only included these images, but also included an ephod, which is priestly attire, and other household gods, likely smaller images. And to finish it off, one of Micah's sons was consecrated as the priest of the shrine, offering sacrifices made there. Why was this accepted in Israel? Because verse 6 said that everyone did what was right in their own eyes. What this means is that once Israel had settled in the land, they began to deviate from the law of God, doing what seemed best to them. By saying this, it doesn't mean that God condoned this practice, for we've learned from this book that he didn't. It's simply stating a fact. Verses 7 to the end of the chapter introduce us to another man, which if he hadn't traveled to where Micah was, we'd know nothing about him. This man was a Levite who had been living in Bethlehem of Judah. We don't know why this Levite was living in Bethlehem, for that wasn't one of the Levitical cities found in Judah, but that is not important for us to understand the story. Whatever the case, though, this Levite came to the mountains of Ephraim and said that he was looking for a place to stay. Again, we don't know why he was moving. Perhaps it was because he wanted to be closer to Shiloh, where the tabernacle was. We just don't know. But regardless, this Levite found his way to Micah's house. Micah, seeing an opportunity to have an actual Levitical priest attend to his shrine, thinking that that would put him in God's favor, offered this Levite a job that would pay him 10 shekels silver per year, plus a suit of clothes and food. This pleased the Levite, so he accepted, and the Levite became like one of the family of Micah, attending to the shrine that Micah had set up. But even though Micah thought that the Lord would be pleased with this arrangement, was he? Well, we already know from Exodus 20 that he didn't want to be worshipped by idols, and we know from previous studies that the Lord had placed his tabernacle in Shiloh and wanted sacrifices offered there. So we can know that even though the chapter is silent, that Micah was not doing what was right in the eyes of the Lord. But that will also become evident from the events of chapter 18, events that we'll begin looking at, the Lord willing, in the next lesson. With that, our time is up for today. The Lord willing, I hope you'll join us for tomorrow's discussion of Judges chapter 18, verses 1 to 13, as we continue our walk through the Bible, one verse at a time. Thank you for watching today's episode. We hope that you found it edifying and ask that you not only subscribe to our channel and podcast, but that you like and share this episode among your friends, so that the saving gospel of Jesus Christ can go out to the whole world.